Budgeting and cost control for managers. Do you need a more effective way to budget? Is cost control an issue in your organisation? A lot of people I talk to tell me that budgets cost too much. You may know from your own organisation that you start the budget cycle way back months before the new year starts. Lots and lots of people are involved in putting together very detailed numbers, and those numbers go around several rounds and iterations and so on before they're finally put together. And altogether, a huge amount of time and effort is spent in the budget process. And for what? By the time the new year starts, the numbers probably aren't current anymore, and certainly by the time you get to the end of the year, you're measuring yourself against numbers that you first thought about maybe 15, 16 months before, and really they're not the right numbers to manage your business against. And maybe cost control's a real issue. You need to save money, or you need to increase profits and cash. Chances are the challenges come along outside of that budget cycle. You need to do something at the time that you're not putting the budget together. You need to go in and cut cost. So we develop budgeting and cost control for managers to help you in all of those processes. So just diving in, take a closer look at what this is all about. It's around three things. It's giving you a process that's driven by business priorities. It's giving you ways to understand your cost base, and it's giving you a process or tools and techniques that can be very much action oriented. But first, it's all about a planning and budgeting framework. And if we dive in and take a close look, whatever plans and budgets you put together, they've got to be driven from your 3 to 5 year business plan. So it's very important that you start with strategy and know that your business strategy is absolutely clear and it's driving things. And from there, you can go into proper target setting and action planning for each year, which eventually drive into budgets and forecasts. Budgets and forecasts have to be linked to those targets. And the budget and the forecast will always be the link between strategy and operations. The budget as it goes through the year will drive team and individual priorities right through the organisation with everything aligned from back office through production, through sales and market to client delivery. And we'll report performance out of there, which can inform new forecasts and next budgets. That all hits together in a process with strategic learning and feedback going through to inform the business plan as it's updated for the next year. And everything we teach in planning and cost control for managers is all based on the planning and budgeting framework. And one of the key tools that we use is zero-based budgeting, because this has to be very much driven by business priorities, whether it's setting a budget or it's talking about cost reduction in mid-year. ZBB is all about starting with a blank page. Everything needs to be justified. We're not talking about taking last year's numbers and giving them a percentage increase, as many organisations do when they want a fast top-down budget. We've got to look from bottom up and make sure things agree with the business strategy, and more importantly, agree with the customer's priorities, because the zero-based budget needs to focus on the value activities in the organisation. It's got to be strategy-driven. The organisation needs to be clear on its vision and strategy, a shared understanding of business priorities right across the business and tied right back into those customer priorities. It's got to be put together bottom-up, with every budget line challenged and justified, with ownership of the numbers at the appropriate level so that the right people have put the numbers together, own the numbers, and feel obliged to achieve what they've set themselves as a target. The process will always need robust challenge, and to do this it might be appropriate to have a budget committee or a senior management team that challenges the budget or the cost reductions as they're being put together. And they've got to understand the business inside out and be able to ask all the difficult questions. It's also necessary to understand the cost base. So the second tool that we use, and it's an ideal partner to zero-based budgeting, is activity-based costing. Controlling cost isn't simply about looking at overhead cost centres and looking at what's being spent line by line. You've got to really understand customer and product profitability, understand pricing, understand the product mix you should be producing, and understand the customer service decisions. We find that very often a simple product ends up being overpriced and a complex product ends up being underpriced, meaning that no matter how much cost reduction you do, that fundamental misunderstanding of the cost base means you never get to the right place. So as we look at the ABC model, we use a simple model that says customers buy outputs and products that are generated from process and activities that consume resources. And those together give us customer and business unit profitability, give us the unit cost of products as a result of putting volumetrics through the ABC model, and show us that there are two sections. The first section is prioritization. Which customers and which products and services are the most profitable? And producing those, the resources and the process and activities, are they being done as efficiently, as effectively as possible? And it's in those areas that lean and process improvement come to bear. The system needs to be action oriented. You've got to be able to look forwards. Too many financial systems simply look backwards, look at the results that were obtained in the past month, in the past quarter, in the past year, and tell you quite often when it's too late what's going wrong. You need information sooner than that, so we talk about rolling forecasts, looking at how, rather than budgeting, you can use a rolling forecast system that updates the numbers that you're monitoring against every month. It makes you look forwards, and it always means that you're measuring yourself against current numbers. Scorecards and dashboards are very important, because nearly always a number with a pounds or a dollars sign in front of it looks backwards. Other KPIs look forwards, and they're equally as, if not more important than the financial numbers, so have to be integrated into your planning and costing system. And there are many, many tools that can be used throughout the system in order to manage things. So we talk about lean and continuous improvement, and learn about the wastes that are involved in lean, the 6 wastes. Six Sigma is a common augmentation of lean in a lot of organisations, and it's a very, very powerful toolkit you can use. Service level agreements are also very powerful in controlling cost. They mean that you're very clear on what you are and are not giving particular customers, or even internally between departments, so that it is clear that you give a common level of service to everyone, and that common level of service is produced cost effectively and efficiently. Value-based management is a further member of the toolkit that can be used very effectively as part of the set of things to manage and control cost in the organisation. So, I'm Kevin Appleby, and I teach budgeting and cost control for managers. I'm a chartered accountant. I qualified way back with BDO in Newcastle and moved on to be European Business Accountant of ICI's plastics business, where I learned all about planning and budgeting and worked very much in a traditional budgeting framework within ICI. The business that I worked with in ICI also went through significant cost reduction, and it was there that I got my first experience of using activity-based costing and zero-based budgeting to really transform a business. After ICI, I moved on to PwC as a management consultant and worked in PwC's planning and budgeting and performance management business, specialising in rolling out planning and budgeting to clients and developing scorecards and dashboards. And even now, I spend a lot of time working with a small niche management consultancy called Proderi, often in the public sector, and working around very similar things, mainly activity-based costing and cost reduction projects. So I've done this at a number of places before. We've mentioned ICI. My previous employer, Mouchel, following the 2010 general election in the UK, found its business dropping away as government stopped spending money and austerity cut in. This meant that Mouchel had to lose cost very, very quickly as its top line disappeared. I was part of the corporate transformation team that made this happen. After Mouchel, I worked for a while with EDF Energy on their coal-fired power stations, and I was responsible for bringing cost control. As part of that process, implemented zero-based budgeting across the stations and went through a major exercise in creating a bottom-up budget mainly for the maintenance operation of ageing and very difficult to keep running assets. While with PwC, I worked with Virgin Holidays and looked at the very interesting problem of the business cycle of the business, which was typically the 24 months of a holiday brochure not matching the 12 months of a budget cycle. I also worked with the Ministry of Defence, implementing scorecards for the defence supply chain, and more recently in the NHS, implementing activity-based costing, zero-based budgeting, and operational dashboards in the NHS's clinical back office. So, what do we do on budgeting cost control for managers? Well, it's a 4-day programme. On day 1, we talk about business planning, so we're clear about strategy. Day 2, we talk about budgeting. Day 3, we talk about cost control. And on the final day, we talk about an awful lot more of the cost management tools that can be used. So if we look at that in a little bit more detail. You can see on day 1, we talk about strategy, strategic planning, the process of linking plans to budget, and start talking about the budget setting and monitoring process. On day 2, we extend that. We look at different budgeting methods. We compare traditional budgeting and activity-based costing. We look at, once that budget process is going, how you actually manage the process. And we spend some time as well looking at capital budgets, the special techniques that you might use to budget for capital assets. And round that off by looking at reporting performance. How do you actually monitor against the budget once you've set it? Day 3 moves into cost control, and to start with, it's very important that we understand cost behaviours. So we look at the differences between fixed and variable costs, between overheads and things like that, and move on to costing techniques and start talking about activity-based costing. Then we look further at understanding product and customer profitability and how ABC can be used in practice along with other techniques in order to focus on the more profitable products and the more profitable customers, and how you can bottom slice your business to get rid of the things that don't make sense. That leads us into talking further about cost reduction and the various tools and techniques you can use to remove cost from the business. The final day, we look at some more tools that really help in all of those processes. The first one is Balanced Scorecard. So we look in more depth at how you might use KPIs and so on to augment your financial reporting. Then we look at lean techniques and Six Sigma and consider how continuous improvement can be a real part of your cost management strategy. Then we discuss service level agreements, and we move on finally to value-based management and how that can work in your business. If you want to find out more, you can download the full course details from www.applebyconsulting.co.uk/courses. And there's also a link there that you can book a place on the next course. We can also put the course on in-house, and we can also customize the course to meet your individual requirements. And if you want to do that and find out more, or maybe you've got some challenges, call IA Seminars on +44 333 344 3321.